Hey there, beginning Instagram Live. I hope people are safe and sound in their homes. You know, now that we're starting to see kind of a light at the end of the tunnel, there's clear evidence that we're going to be reopening the economy. A lot of other countries have reopened their economy. I'm starting to dread the fact that things might turn back to normal. I wish, I wonder if other people are feeling this way. We could have done so much more during this lockdown. I could have watched a lot more TV. I could have written a book. I could have tried out more ideas. Now, I think I was as productive as could be, but now looking back on it, with the lockdown's going to end or we're going to start to have a phase ending of the lockdown, probably even within the next few days. We're going to start to hear more news about lockdown ending. And I don't know. I'm starting to feel apprehensive, like maybe I was enjoying the lockdown a little bit. So, someone suggested I should have my question list up. Good point. I have it up. So, and Jay's probably going to join any second. But I just wanted to, at some point, there's going to be a little bit of data fatigue about coronavirus. But if you've been listening to these IG Lives, and this is 4 weeks now, I've been doing these every single day, you'll remember right in the beginning, I said April 15th probably would be the peak of the virus in the United States. And tomorrow is April 15th, and it looks like we've already been kind of peaking. And the way I define the peak is the number of new deaths per day start to go down. And the reason it looks like tomorrow, or even already, might have been a peak in the U.S. is because New York City and New Jersey alone, or New York and New Jersey alone, the number of new deaths per day, or the number of total deaths for New York and New Jersey, is more than all the other 48 states combined. And New York City is going down very quickly right now, and hospitalizations per day is going down very quickly, which means infections are probably going down very quickly. So in general, this virus is most likely going to peak in the U.S. tomorrow, or has already peaked. And so what's going to happen? What's going to happen now that we've peaked? And, there's been a lot of hints about reopening the economy. A lot of other countries have been reopening their economies. Some countries never even closed down their economies. And so Jay is collecting your questions right now, and I'll start addressing them. But the first one is related to what I'm talking about. Do you think they will limit what opens back up right away? So here, this is just a guess. I have no idea what's going on in the, deep, dark basement held meetings at the White House where they're discussing this. But if I were president, here's how I would open up. First off, I would say no more federal guidelines at all. So I'm leaving it to the states. So this way, no one, that's kind of a cover your ass sort of thing, which is that if some states start to spike in cases after the lockdown is over, it's up to the governor of that state to decide what to do. So my guess is first, the president is going to say, all of my guidelines are over, or most of my guidelines are over. I'm leaving it up to the states. And then what the states will do, this one state will open up, then another state will open up. Then it'll be kind of a race for the states to reopen, because no state wants to be the last one with the most unemployment and the most people on lockdown. Particularly, there's something like 32 states with fewer than 100 deaths out of, millions and millions of people per state. So most of these states are going to reopen very quickly. Now, how will they reopen? Are they just going to say, everything's open up? I kind of doubt it. Like, they're not going to, it's not like day one, everybody's going to be going out to, Madison Square Garden and watching Bruce Springsteen or Lady Gaga or whatever in a concert. I wouldn't watch either of those in a concert, by the way, but in any case. And I also don't think people are going to be going back to eating in restaurants so quickly. Maybe some will, some won't. And in general, also, there's going to be a new normal where we might not do as much clothes shopping anymore. We might do that online. It's interesting. Consumer buying was actually up this past month because so many people started hoarding at grocery stores, and so many people were buying on Amazon that actually consumers bought more items than they did the month before. But so I do think the president is gonna say, okay, I'm not involved anymore. It's gonna be state by state. I do think the states are gonna compete with each other to see who will reopen first. I have no reason to believe this. Maybe there's gonna be other guidelines. I don't think large gatherings will be allowed. I think people are gonna be told to, hey, keep social distancing. It would be good if you keep wearing a mask. It'd be good if you stayed home rather than go out as much. But in general, now that the stimulus checks are getting out there, and trust me, they are getting out there. I know of at least one small business run by a friend of mine that, just cashed their small business loan, which was part of the stimulus package. So I do think things are going to open up pretty quickly, and there'll be a race from the states to reopen. And again, all the data suggests that we probably should never have even locked down. Now, people will say, oh, if you didn't lock down, there would have been millions more deaths. There's no evidence of that. Here's how just all the research seems to suggest that the virus transmits actually most within a family or within a group that is close together all the time. Like if you're at a wedding, or if you're at on a cruise, or if you're at a funeral, if you're all together coughing on each other, that's the way this virus seems to spread. If you're at a conference, or if you're at a big concert where everybody's coughing on each other, it doesn't seem to spread. I don't know of anybody who got it from just walking in the street. Usually, if I know many people now who've had it, and they usually say, oh yeah, my daughter had it, and then I probably got it from her, which sort of suggests that they should never have closed schools, because now all the kids, whose kids are known for spreading germs anyway, why put all the kids at home spreading germs on their family? So it's unclear, though, whether we should have locked down the economy or not. But I think the biggest evidence is that all the countries that didn't lock down their economy seem to have a similar curve to us. Now, I'm not saying it was a bad decision to lock it down, because I think we just didn't know what was going to happen. But I think it's a shame that nobody took into account, whenever you make a decision, decisions are complex. They're not just like about one thing. So if I say I'm going to go, if I say I'm going to take a certain job, it's not about whether that job is the best job for me. You also have to take into account, well, are there other jobs that might be better for me? Or are there other things I can do that would be better? Or is, it's not just about the salary. Is the quality of life at this job going to be good? Is my commute going to be too big? So the same thing here. It feels like they made this decision. They made many decisions during this whole lockdown phase that were only based on coronavirus. Nobody took into account the fact that there were going to be collateral fatalities. There were going to be people with cancer who might die. There were going to be people with drug addictions who might die, but they wouldn't be able to be treated. There was going to be people who might die because of stress or depression or suicide. During the Great Depression in 1929, the U.S. had its highest suicide rate ever. Suicides are linked to economic stress every single time. And it's not going to be any different now. So I don't think, though, anybody was taking into account all of the complexity of such an important decision like shutting down the economy. Don't forget, doctors are paid by the economy. There's a company called Envision, Envision. It's a public company. I believe it's a public company. Maybe it's a privately held company, but it's a big billion-dollar company, and they just cut the salaries of all their physicians by 33%. Again, the government doesn't pay you. The economy pays you. You can't shut down. The economy and society, the economy and people are the same thing. You can't shut down people. They were able to do it in China because China has this weird, fascist economy. You can do it in Italy because a lot of people just don't work there. So, but you can't do it in the U.S., which is by far the biggest economy in the world and kind of fuels the rest of the world. So I do think we're going to open up. I think the first stage is the president saying open up. And then I think he'll say, let the states decide, and it'll be a race between the states on how to decide. And so what's going to happen is the Democrat, I don't know, will it be partisan? Will the Democrats not open up and the Republican governors open up? I don't know. That will be interesting to see. I hope it's not that case. I hope that this is not partisan, but we'll see. have I adapted my business plan due to quarantine? And my business plan is to the most important thing I do every day is exercise my idea muscle. And I've talked about this many times, but I write down 10 ideas a day, and I exercise and I read a lot, and I exercise that idea muscle, and then I try to see what businesses I want to start or get involved in or invest in. Or I also do this podcast, and so I'll tell you what I've done differently during this time. First off, rather than focusing on general guests for the podcast, like rather than having, William Shatner on the podcast or something like that, I really turned my focus to coronavirus. And the reason is because in a normal day, maybe people are interested in pop culture or how do I get better at life or whatever. But this coronavirus was so important to people's sanity. And I kept seeing that people were not looking at the headlines correctly, or people were not understanding, and that's okay. People were not understanding the data that was being, or people were not understanding why certain decisions were being made. Even now, if you say something like, compare coronavirus to the flu, a lot of people get upset. And I think they get upset for partisan reasons. I'm not really sure. Coronavirus is not like the flu. The flu affects children. Coronavirus affects the elderly. But it's worth comparing, though, in terms of decision making. It turns out the fatality rate is similar to the flu. So if we knew that in the beginning, if we had done a comparison and we understood that in the beginning, maybe we wouldn't have shut down the entire global economy for 7 billion people. So I wanted to kind of explain what I was seeing, and not only what I was seeing, but also I was talking to some of the top doctors in epidemiology, doctors who are doing research on coronavirus, immunologists, healthcare officials, economists. So I wanted to repeat from my point of view the conversations I was having with others to kind of give some sense of hope to people. Like 4 weeks ago, everyone was saying, oh my gosh, we're going to be locked down for 18 months at least. If we were locked down for 18 months, nobody would be left to come out. All these families would kill each other. You can't be locked down for 18 months. There would be nothing left to return to. So, and just looking at the graphs in all the other countries, even a month ago, I was able to say, look, it looks like this is going to peak April 15th. It's not going to be over April 15th. I said it'll be over probably around June 1st, but it will peak and we can start making policy decisions based on that. And so now I was even writing some of the top people in government my own analysis of all the data just from a common sense perspective. And I was surprised how many people agreed with me. But, there were internal battles within the government, I think between, healthcare officials and other officials and so on. So I switched my podcast from being the normal format to being a little bit more focused on coronavirus. Plus, everyone's nervous. I'm even nervous. What's going to happen next? What's the new normal? What are we going to start seeing? And I think it's really important to analyze these things. We're all trying to build careers. We all want to find meaning in our lives. And now with the economy turned upside down for the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, I think it's important to analyze what is the new normal. And I said yesterday, 2 themes are going to be the words remote and the words accelerated. So if everything that can be remote will be remote. So grocery shopping, if you could do it online, it's going to be remote. Online learning or education in general, if you could do more of it online, you're going to do more of it online. If colleges are eventually going to go away, that's going to be accelerated right now. If retail stores are going to go away, that's going to be accelerated. So remote and accelerated are the big themes. So if you want to play that in the markets, I haven't really looked at this stuff, but a company like iRobot, which makes robots, well, they're going to be accelerated. So more industries are going to use robots. Like think about medicine. Doctors don't want to touch contagious patients. So now they're making robots to help with doctors touching patients. So iRobot and companies like that, it's going to be accelerated. So I would make a bet there. I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that's one of the companies I would look at. AVAV makes drones. So again, lack of human contact helps with remote delivery. Drones typically have been used for surveillance or military uses, but now they're going to be used for consumer uses. So AVAV, Aero Environment, they make drones. I recommended them 10 years ago because of drones. I might recommend them again. I don't know. But iRobot, I even recommended in my book, The Forever Portfolio, written in 2008, and it's done very well. So, but another thing I've been doing is, just in general, I've been thinking about my podcast. Like, I love interviewing people, but I'm sick of interviewing kind of just celebrities because I think it'll make the people tune into the podcast. Celebrities are, and I'm tired of doing just basic interviews. I so much more enjoy doing a podcast format, which is either conversations or me simply telling stories. I have lots of stories to tell. So I'm thinking of changing the format of the podcast. I've been thinking a lot about that. I've also been changing a little bit the business model of the podcast, which I could talk about if people were interested. I don't know how many podcasters are out there. Someone says trucking was about to be screwed anyway, but I don't necessarily think that's true. Let's say there are self-driving trucks. Okay, this is what Andrew Yang's point is that I think he mentioned there's 3.5 million truck drivers. If there's self-driving of trucks, then all the truck drivers are gonna go away. This is not true. So if there's self-driving trucks, self-driving only works right now for highway driving. This is really important. There's not going to be self-driving trucks going down the middle of Fifth Avenue in New York City during the day. That's not going to happen. So if there's self-driving trucks, here's what will happen. There will be more trucks on the road because now we can robots don't get tired. So self-driving trucks don't have to take breaks. So there's going to be more trucks on the road. You don't have to hire. You can right now the trucking industry is hiring more truck drivers. So you don't have to hire as many people. You'll just put more trucks on the road that are automated. Now, here's the question. With more trucks on the road going to cities, like let's say New York City, they're not going to drive in New York City. So you're going to need more human drivers to be hired inside the cities to take goods that last mile. And there's going to be many more goods being transported on the highways. So it's not self-driving of trucks doesn't necessarily mean truck drivers are going to have fewer jobs. They just might be different types of jobs. I hope people understand that. And right, someone mentions robots break down. So there will be some element of truck drivers just to keep track of the robot drivers. But there's going to be more drivers hired to do that last mile of driving. Don't think that 3 million people are suddenly going to be unemployed. You can't predict. Here's just basic economics. When a need is filled because it serves some function in the economy, there's going to be invisible parts of the economy that are going to grow that we can't predict. I'll give you a really important example. When ATM machines were created, everyone thought, oh my God, there's millions of bank tellers in the country. They're all going to be fired. All the bank tellers are going to be fired. Here's what happened. Because of ATM machines, profits just tripled in the banks. So banks started opening up a branch on every single corner. There are 3 banks within 1 block of me right now. And that never used to exist before. Until ATM machines, banks weren't as profitable. So banks make so much money, so many profits on ATM machines. They've created more branches, and now there are more bank tellers hired than before ATM machines. No one could have predicted that. So don't get overly smart with predicting what's going to happen when there's automation. We just don't know. And there's going to be things that will happen that are unpredictable, where suddenly there's more profits because of the automation, which means more industries are going to be created, which might mean more stores or jobs are going to be needed. So again, ATM machines, everyone thought, oh my gosh, this is it. It's the end for bank tellers. No, now there are more bank tellers hired than ever before. Same thing, of course, it's a cliche to say, but when the car replaced horses, there are more drivers now than ever before. There are more people maintaining our driving than ever before. So again, industries are created as the economy innovates and develops. It's not like we have to never fear innovation. There has never been a time in our society when innovation has actually caused fewer jobs. There's more jobs every year than the year before. And by the way, with this stimulus package, doesn't matter how many people are unemployed right now. I mean, it matters from the point of it's scary and it's distressing, and I'm upset because I think we made a bad decision and these tens of millions of people are suffering. But because of trillions of dollars of stimulus, all of these people are going to be rehired if they want to be. By the way, the average person on unemployment makes more than the average school teacher right now. So because of the stimulus package. So it might be the case that not everyone wants to be hired back so quickly, but we'll see. I think this is called moral hazard, where you bail everyone out and then you have unforeseen hazardous effects on the economy. So let me see if there's more, another question. Jay's been keeping good track. Oh, another thing I've been doing is I've been spending more time, and this is going to sound odd, I've been spending more time on social media. I've been creating more content for Instagram, for TikTok, for Twitter, doing these Instagram lives, and then I put these Instagram lives on YouTube. I've been very, I think this time with everybody home was very important for content creators to create more content and to create content that could actually help people through this crisis. Not just create random content, but create content that actually, this is the most stressful time in our lives in a societal way. I might have been more stressed at different points if someone close to me died or if I was going through a divorce. But for societal reasons, this is the most stressful time. And I really just felt it was important to not just spread a message on my podcast, but to do it on Twitter, to do it even on TikTok. I would do these little videos, good news about the coronavirus. And by the way, again, I am patting myself on the back. All of my predictions were correct. So I think also I've been trying to figure out during this time, it's always useful to take a step back and figure out what your purpose in life is. And I feel that's a cliche, like, whoa, what's my purpose in life? Like, I got an email from somebody I'm 27 years old. Have I failed because I don't know what my purpose in life is? No, I mean, when I was young, I never even thought about what my purpose in life is, but it's become part of the norm to think about what your purpose in life is. And I think it is important to take a step back. The whole world's changing. You don't have to go back to your job. Just like if you have a cubicle job and you hated your boss, don't go back to your job. File for unemployment or figure out, some way to get by and start really thinking about what you want to do next in life. You don't have to just go back to the cubicle. Cubicle, again, is a 6x6 prison cell. I mean, I take it back. An actual prison cell is 8x8 and has a toilet in it. A cubicle is 6x6 and you got to go down the hall with the toilet and share it with your boss, which is disgusting. So, yeah, and again, I think it's we only have this short life. Like, I look at my own lifespan and maybe I have 30 summers left, best case, or maybe 50 more holidays left to spend with my kids, maybe even fewer. So of those 50, do I really want to be miserable about what I do for a living? What sort of people I engage with, what arguments I get into, what toxic people I fight with, who I feel threatened by that I'm trying to impress. I feel like I'm always trying to impress certain people. And I realize their opinions are so useless that why would I care so much? And I kind of been more realizing this during this lockdown. But so how do you find, though, a purpose in life? Well, one way, I'll give you an idea. One way is to look at your Instagram photos that you've taken over the past 5 years. What categories, what subjects have you taken photographs about? And what subjects did you take photos about that you love so much that you wanted to share them with other people? Like, if I look at my Instagram, I'm going to look at my Instagram right now. If I look at my Instagram, there's pictures of books, there's funny things. So I'm always, there's pictures of me doing comedy. There's pictures of me with, again, lots of pictures of me doing comedy. There's pictures of me with my friends. There's pictures of me of quotes from books I've written. So I think, okay, this would suggest, I like comedy. I like writing. There's pictures of me with my podcast guests. I like doing my podcast. There's videos of me doing my older book club, which I don't do as much anymore. So I like books. And there's pictures of me playing games. There's a picture of me playing poker, 2 pictures of me playing poker. There's a picture of me playing Go, another picture of me playing chess. Here's a picture of me doing stand-up. So that suggests to me I'm interested in Podcasts, writing, reading, stand-up comedy, family, and whatever else. I have a lot of kind of motivational stuff here, so I'm interested in self-improvement. And, just from my Instagram, I can see what it is that I'm interested in. Another thing I like to do is, and I've talked about this before, I like to take what I was interested in when I was 12 or 13 years old and age it. So now that I'm older, what if I was interested in comic books when I was 12, what does it mean for me right now? Well, maybe I would want to write a comic book. Maybe I would want to collect comic books. Maybe I would want to write a science fiction novel. Or maybe I want to write a novel or a book where it covers the arc of the hero. Or maybe I want to write some nonfiction analyzing, why Spider-Man was more interesting than Superman. I'm not saying he was, I'm just saying. So you take your interests and you age them. And you know what I was really interested in? I was obsessed. When I was in 6th grade, I was obsessed with politics. Now, I didn't know a damn thing about the issues. I had no clue, what the issues were. But I was obsessed with reading about every presidential election, congressional elections, governor elections. I was obsessed with, here's what I would do. I would call up every congressman and senator and governor and even the president I would try to call. And I still remember the number, 202-456-1414. I will bet you that's still the White House phone number. I still remember it because I was dialing it every day. I'm surprised they didn't send the FBI after me. But I was obsessed with interviewing all these politicians. And I wouldn't ask them, well, how do you feel about, pro-choice? Or how do you feel about war? Or this, that. I would just ask them, how did you get elected? What made you want to get elected? What techniques did you do to get elected? I was interested in the game of politics. And I realize now I still am. Like I go on predicted.org and I'm betting all the time on the outcomes of elections. So the things you do in life tend to be what you loved even as a kid, what you were so curious about as a kid, when nobody would limit your curiosity. When you're 12 years old, you can be curious about anything and people will still love you for it. Like now, if you're curious about chemistry or doing work on the coronavirus, people will say, you can't do that. You're not a PhD. You're not a biologist or a doctor. Anytime someone tells you you can't do something you're curious about and fascinated about, you're going in the right direction. Just ignore. On the other side of can't is success, always. So if someone's just annoying, tells you can't do that, you don't have XYZ qualifications, that's absolutely the reason why you should do something. So, and by the way, I was interested in computers as a kid, and I was always going. So my dad got me the parts of like an Apple II Plus, and I put it together. I had my own computer, and my friend Steve and I, we were like in 6th grade, 7th grade. We'd go to the local computer game store. I'm ashamed to admit it, but we would steal games and then hack into them so we would win all the time. But that's what I was interested in as a kid, I'm afraid to say. I was also oddly interested in meditation as a kid. So when I was in 7th grade, I got obsessed, or 8th grade, I got obsessed with meditation because I thought I would be able to astral project out of my body. You have this ghost body that would astral project during meditation, and I would be able to go and visit, and see all the girls I liked and whatever. Anyway, that was creepy, but I was interested in meditation as a kid, and that has continued to this current day and age. And of course, I never did astral project, but I did learn how to meditate. And also, I was always interested in being a spy. Like I loved being a voyeur and kind of finding out people's secrets. And I think that's kind of fueled my podcast a little bit, fueled my interviewing. And so again, I look back on it, all of my interests when I was 12 or 13, they've all aged into something I do now. And even now, so when you're finding your purpose or what it is you're passionate about, first off, you can't think your way to a purpose, you have to do things. So, for instance, I resisted being a computer programmer. Both my parents were computer programmers. They wanted me to be a computer programmer, which if both your parents tell you to do something, that is the 100% chance you're going to do the opposite. So I was really not interested in computer programming. But my first business I started while I was in college, and I had to program point of sale machines that I installed in every restaurant. And then I had to write all this software and a database and all this kind of stuff. It was the first time I'd ever programmed anything. And doing things, I never would have thought that I wanted to be into software. And now I'm totally not into it at all, really. But doing things, you can't think your way to your passion. You have to do things. You have to experiment and try things. Now, don't go away for a year. Like, don't go to medical school before you have any experience with medicine, because you might not be interested in it and you might spend all this money. Figure out experiments you can do to see if you're actually interested in something. And then if you do lots of experiments, you do 30 experiments, one or two things you might say, oh my gosh, I love this. It's lighting, I'm dreaming about it at night. So once I started programming, I started dreaming about programs at night, and I got obsessed. And so senior year of college, I switched majors to computer science. What was the first thing they said to me? You can't do this. You haven't taken a single computer science class. Why do you think you could major in computer science? But I did it. If someone tells you you can't do something, you go on the other side of that. If someone tells you, you can't be a specialist in genomics, then I don't care if you have a medical degree or not. You got to do it. And I mentioned my friend Jamie Metzel yesterday. He wrote science fiction novels and he worked for the government, but he got obsessed with genomics, and he wrote the book you should read if you want to learn about genomics, called Hacking Darwin. It came out in the past 6 months. So don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do. But I will say this, you have to do something in order to know you can't think your way to passion. You have to do things and then feel what lights up in your heart. And so here's 3 good questions to ask. Very important. Here's 3 good questions to ask to help you figure out what your unique voice and passion is. Because not only are you going to find your passion and your purpose, but it has to be unique to you. Because else you're doing the same thing everyone else is doing. Like if my passion was to, write a book about gratitude, that would be the most boring self-help book in the world, because everyone else is writing books. Oh, be grateful, blah, blah, blah. That's not unique. That's boring. Don't do that. Or if you're going to do stand-up comedy, don't just write jokes about, well, I was on Tinder the other day, or here's the funny thing about airplanes. Every shitty comedian is making those jokes. Don't do those jokes. You have to have, what's your unique perspective? So here are the 3 questions you have to ask. Who are you? Why are you? Why now? So who am I? I have a podcast. I have a background in both science and in writing and in investing. So I'll keep with that for a second. And why am I? Well, I had all these interests in, like I said before, I was fascinated and obsessed with computers. Then I became fascinated and obsessed with investing. Then I became fascinated and obsessed with either writing and podcasting and kind of these forms of communication where it's, I could broadcast to many people. And so these 3 things is the why me. And then why now? Well, I'm able to combine all 3 of these things. And now and coronavirus has been so important these past 1 to 2 months that I felt I had a passion about spreading what I considered to be not just good news about coronavirus, but accurate news. Because I didn't think the media was accurate. I didn't think the health officials were being accurate. I didn't think the scientists or the so-called experts were being accurate. Everybody had their own agenda. I didn't think the politicians were being accurate. So I felt like, given my experience in science, writing, and with writing, the ability to communicate complex ideas to everybody, and my obsession with investing forced me to analyze the economy. Investors are always going to have better insights into the economy than economists. because economists have nothing to lose. They've got their tenured positions at their shitty little colleges, and I have, as Nassim Taleb would put it, I have skin in the game. I live or die based on the economy, and so do many people. So I felt and then with coronavirus, basically all of these areas, science, economy, and communication, the exact three areas I've spent my life specializing in, all three areas were failing society as a society. So that's the who am I, why am I, and why now. That's why I spent a lot of time this past month kind of addressing issues and questions and concerns and policies about coronavirus, to the point where I was communicating with, I'll write about it later, but I was communicating with people who are like top 5 in the government and explaining my perspective, and they were thanking me for it. So it's and I was just, again, it was the combination of all these interests, and it was the why now that kind of sent me in that direction. And it's fair to ask every single day, who are you? Why are you? Why now? And that will help you find your purpose. So again, just finding your purpose, very simple. I'll talk about 3 ways. One way I didn't mention yet. So the first way, look at your Instagram photos. For the past 3 years, what have you been most excited about communicating to friends, family, followers, and so on? That is a clear indication of what your passions should be. So if you work as an accountant, but all your photos are of you on stage doing improv comedy, then maybe consider what you could do for a living in improv comedy. And don't think it's impossible. You can monetize almost anything in this economy, particularly with this stimulus package and $6 trillion landing on this economy. It's your obligation to have your hand out and figure out how you can get some of that money. But you could only do it with things you're obsessed with things you're passionate about. So look down your Instagram photos, see what you photograph the most. Those are a good clue to your passions. Everything is about finding the clues. Another clue, what were you list down on a waiter's pad. What were you passionately interested in when you were 12 years old and 13 years old? You're probably going to be interested in how those things aged. Heck, I was obsessed with breakdancing when I was 12 years old. Now, does that mean I'm going to be a professional breakdancer now? No, but it's how I exercise every day. I don't like going on a treadmill, but try breakdancing for a half hour a day. You're going to get exercise. So for me, that's how it's aged. That's how that passion of mine has aged since the age of 12. And here's one photograph that I stored. Somebody wrote a blog post, and it's titled James Altucher, Zionist Psycho-Intelligence Agent. Look at this pathetic lying piece of garbage. He literally says, I'm devoted to honesty, as corny as it sounds. It does sound corny because you are a lying, psychopathic, Zionist terrorist. The man in the picture above, and it's me, and this is an Instagram, the man in the picture above and below poses as some sort of self-help author, but the truth is that he works for intelligence and he knows all about stalking techniques. He is participating in a Stasi-style takedown of the U.S., and he is a lying psychopath. So I guess I'm interested in people who are completely insane and focused on me as well. That's another interest of mine. So the third thing, though, there was a third way to find your passion and your interest, which is how would you structure your ideal day? What does your ideal day look like? Is your ideal day writing? Is your ideal day watching TV, which maybe means you might want to write a TV script or act or do reviews of TV shows? Like, I love writing reviews of TV shows. What does your ideal day look like? Just write it down. Or another thing is, look at your calendar over the past 2 months. What were the activities? Rate each activity on your calendar from 0 to 10, how much you enjoyed it. The things that were 8, 9s, or 10s, those might be your passions and your interests. So I don't really make money off of stand-up comedy, but it's certainly a lot in my calendar, and so I love doing it. So I do it up to 10 times a week, sometimes even more. You always want to water your passions, because even if I don't make a living doing stand-up comedy, right now, I'll tell you this right now, in 3 days, I'm pitching TV shows to a couple of major TV networks. And certainly they're not related to comedy at all. They're actually related to the opposite. but my comedic skills will come in handy. You never know when your skills from one interest can be combined with another one. In fact, they should always combine. Again, my interest in science, my interest in writing, my interest in comedy, my interest in interviewing people, all came together and combined with this coronavirus. They all come together and combined with, my interest in games and computer science combined when I started getting interested in investing, because investing is basically one giant game. So someone says, I miss the comedy club. I do as well. And we'll see which comedy clubs even are back in business when this is all said and done. There's going to be a lot more, most comedians should probably just go ahead and get jobs, because I don't know if comedy clubs are coming back. But I want to talk about one time I was maybe interested in something, but then again, sometimes things sound exciting, but that you don't know until you do it. You always have to do things and experiment before you find out what's interesting. So I'm going to tell you a story. This was in a long time ago. I was young, and this father of a friend of mine was a doctor. He was a really big doctor in the Cleveland Clinic Hospital, one of the most important hospitals in the world. And this doctor happened to be dying. He had a rare form of disease that was hurting his white blood cells. I think it was a kind of leukemia. So he knew he was going to die within 6 to 12 months. And he wanted to write a novel kind of exposing what he thought were kind of the scam of the medical industry. But he didn't know how to write it. He just had these ideas. So he calls me up and he asks me, James, can you ghostwrite this novel for me? And I said, that sounds great. It sounds amazing. I'll ghostwrite a novel for you. And I had just started writing fiction and novels and so on. I wasn't published yet or anything, but this was an opportunity. And he said he would pay me. He was going to pay me like $500, which was huge for me. And he said, but the one trick is, you've got to come and see the hospital. I'd never been in a hospital in my life at that point. So he said, you have to come and see the hospital. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? He says, well, we're going to pretend you're a respiratory therapist. So I went to Cleveland, and for an entire week, I was officially a respiratory therapist. And they teamed me up with a senior respiratory therapist, and I would go around from room to room doing rounds with this person. And sometimes she was busy, so I would walk elderly people on respirators, or on some kind of breathing equipment up and down until they were out of breath because they had to exercise their lungs. I was doing things, but as a respiratory therapist. And so it got me a chance to see what would life be like in a hospital. And by the way, it wasn't very pleasant. This didn't become an interest of mine. But here's another thing though. When I got back, I started writing the novel, and I was excited about it. So the novel was based on this doctor who was dying, wanted to write a novel exposing all the scams, but needed a ghostwriter, and then he died while the ghostwriter was still a respiratory therapist in the hospital, and the writer got in all sorts of trouble, blah, blah. So I started writing this down, and he was like, no. He started reading, he's like, no. I want you're ghostwriting, but I come up with the story. He's pointing to himself. I want to have, the character base of me has to have an affair with the respiratory therapist who is helping you. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. That has nothing to do with what we were talking about. But he secretly, my guess is, had a crush on this respiratory therapist. So he said, I'm paying you. That's the plot. And I said, okay, fine. And then almost immediately, I got massive carpal tunnel syndrome. So I physically couldn't type. It would really hurt a lot when I typed. And I kept telling him, I can't type. You call me every day. This is the novel. Do you work on the novel? I can't type. I have carpal tunnel syndrome. And he kept saying, I'll come over to your place. I'll give you this cortisone shot. And I'm like, no. I don't want a cortisone shot. He's like, well, you might need surgery. I'm like, no. And then, sadly, the doctor died. And I didn't have to write this novel anymore. And my carpal tunnel syndrome cured in a second. So I learned then, by doing and trying something and doing this experiment, that A, I got a kick out of being in disguise and being a respiratory therapist in a hospital, and B, I didn't want to ghostwrite someone else's book. So I didn't want to do that at all. And these were good instincts for me. Like, I could have gone down the path of being a ghostwriter, but I didn't. And learning this, you don't learn this by thinking. It might sound exciting to do ghostwrite a book like this and team up with like a famous doctor who works in a famous hospital and do all these things to get your undercover, to get your info. But I didn't want to do it. I had carpal tunnel. I got a psychosomatic illness as soon as I started writing, and we were having a fight. So only by doing, I also learned what I didn't want to do with my life. So if you're not passionately interested in something, you're not going to do a good job. If you're not obsessed with what you're doing for a living, you're always going to be beaten out by someone who's obsessed. Some people are obsessed with ghostwriting. So my friend Neil Strauss, he wrote a book called The Game. He is a great ghostwriter. He wrote Jenna Jameson's book. He wrote Kevin Hart's book. I read Kevin Hart's book and I'm thinking, man, Kevin Hart's like a great writer. I didn't know that. Turns out Neil Strauss wrote it. So he loves ghostwriting. Some people, I don't. And I only would have learned that by doing. Let me tell you another story. I had this idea in 1999. I had this idea for a website. I wanted to make the ultimate beauty contest. And so I created a website where people could sign up, and then they could upload their photos, and then they could write a journal every day, like kind of like this is what happened to me today. They could upload their interests. They had a mailbox so they could message each other through the site. You could make friends with the different people who were signed up for the beauty contest, and you could message back and forth. In other words, I'd created a social network, but I didn't know what to do. I created this whole site. It was finished, but I didn't know what to do. I kept thinking it was an online beauty contest, and nobody wanted to I kept trying to partner with beauty magazines and fashion magazines. No one wanted to partner with me. So I gave up and threw it away, and that's when I actually started getting into the investing industry. But what an idiot I was. If I had just thought a little differently about this, I would have said, you know what? This is like MySpace or Friendster or GeoCities or Tribe.com. Maybe this is a social network. But I didn't even think that way. And the reason is because I wasn't interested in beauty contests. I didn't want to create another beauty contest. So here I had done all this work creating what now, looking back on it, now was a social network. It was like it was like a pre-Facebook, but because I wasn't passionately interested, because I wasn't obsessed with what I was doing, I basically missed an enormous opportunity. So that if you're not obsessed, don't even start doing something. So, so instead, I got into investing because I became obsessed with it. And then I combined my interest with investing and writing, and that's how I got my first book deal. And that's how I created a website, Stock Picker, that I was able to sell for millions, which I then lost all of that, but that's another story. Someone just asked, how do I flesh out ideas to write? Well, I'll write down, sometimes I'll think about stories, and I'll just start with, like I'll write this respiratory therapist story, and I'll start off in some insane way, like, and then for an entire week I was a respiratory therapist and I saw 3 people die. That might be the first sentence. If you read a sentence like that, you're going to continue. So you want to make sure with every sentence that every sentence has a cliffhanger. There should always be a reason. In an age where attention spans are 15-second TikTok videos, you should always give someone a reason to read the next sentence in your article or blog or a book or whatever. So I always start with a story that I could tell. Because also, if I just say gratitude is good, here's the scientific research to say gratitude is good, that is bullshit, because scientific research doesn't always apply to real life. I hate all those books where it's like, scientific research shows that if you're vulnerable, you're more likely to score higher in your SATs, blah, blah, blah. I hate those books. You have to tell a story, always. No matter what you're saying, you have to tell a story. So I can't just tell you, you could find, if somebody tells you, you can't do this, then success is on the other side of can't. Keep going. I have to give you a story where someone told me I can't do this, and I kept going, and I did it. So I have many stories like that. So I'll tell a story, and then I'll just keep writing. I don't really outline, I just write. And if it's story driven, and if every sentence you keep people going, And if somewhere in there you have kind of a point that helps people, I like to make sure there's many reasons for someone to like something I write. So it has to be entertaining, it has to be maybe funny, and it has to be educational in some way. So this way, someone might hate the writing, but they learned something, so they like it. Someone might not have learned anything, but they like the story, so they like it. Someone might not have liked the story or thought it was educational, but they thought something was funny, so they like it. You always want to give people multiple doors they can enter to like your writing. Same thing with a podcast as well. Same thing with these IG lives. I like to mix storytelling with a little bit of humor when possible, with informational data and suggestions and so on, based on my experience, not based on like a scientific study or whatever. So that's how I found ideas for my writing. So now I'm going to see, man, these go fast. Like we have 9 minutes left before they cut me off. Let's see. Will you be doing Insta Live podcasts? I think these should be podcasts, actually. So I'm debating that. Again, I'm constantly debating the format of a podcast. And I think everybody should take a step back and always debate what's a good format for a novel? What's a good format for a podcast? Always create, always innovate. So the very first podcasts were interview podcasts. The very first novels were these, Victorian era romance novels or whatever. And then you play with the format and you experiment and you have to do things in order to know. So if I can't just think of new formats and then say, this is it, this is where I'm going. I have to experiment and see how people respond. Obviously you want uploads to go up and you want to monetize and so on. What's my purpose in life? Well, that's a good question. I always ask myself every day, who am I? Why now? And so I think I have a good combination of a scientific background and writing/communicating background where I take complex concepts and translate them. I did that for 20 years with the investing world, and now I have an opportunity to do that with coronavirus, and I did that a few months ago with Iran and so on. So I think my combination is somehow to combine my knowledge of researching complex ideas with my writing, with hopefully maybe stand-up comedy, with my fascination with games and so on. When does the Ask Altucher podcast come back? Good question. Maybe that's a format I should do for my podcast right now. What's my prediction for the next market dip? Very quickly, I do think with the stock market right now, I do like the fact that it seems to have stabilized a little bit and now it should go up. It will go up. Like the economic stimulus, $6 trillion is going to ultimately flow into the stock market. So that's going to double at least the stock market by the end of 2021. But do not forget that there is coming up some volatility. There's going to be all these newspaper headlines predicting the second wave of coronavirus. Expect those headlines to hit around August or September. There's going to be all these headlines about the next financial crisis, commercial real estate going out of business, insurance companies going out of business. So there's going to be headlines about a Great Depression or inflation or deflation or another financial crisis. So there's going to be more volatility in the market. Only buy a stock if you think it's undervalued and if you think in the new normal, it's going to work well. And remember, remote is key, acceleration is key. So robot companies, drone companies, by the way, marijuana companies, because marijuana sales surged during this period. Anything that's going to be in the new, and also, how do you think the government's going to pay and all the states are going to pay for all this financial stimulus? They're going to have to make marijuana legal recreationally everywhere so they can tax it. They're going to have to make other drugs legal so they can tax it. So, marijuana is going to be huge. Probably vaping, for better or for worse, will be huge. I think there's going to be some healthcare that's going to go up that hasn't already gone up. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't have a good sense of that yet. But definitely robots, drones, anything relating to more bandwidth on the internet, that's going to go up because bandwidth has been really taxed during this period. So, I think tech's going to go up faster than other companies. Oil's going to go back huge. So any solid, safe oil company, I think a lot of people are going to have babies in the next 9 months. So maybe company, I don't even know, I haven't even thought about this before. Maybe companies catering to babies. Don't forget, very important, there was a 300 million condom global shortage in the past month because Malaysia is shut down. And whether you know this or not, there is one factory in Malaysia, I think they're called K-Rex, that makes almost all of your condoms. So they were shut down. They did not make any condoms the past month. And they usually make about 100 million condoms a week. So alcohol sales up, condom sales down. What happens? A lot of drunk sex babies are going to be born 9 months from now. And so I don't know what that means. I mean, personally, I'm glad I'm beyond the point where I'm having babies. This is what a baby is, in my view. It's a 1 foot tall, non-English speaking, brand new US citizen that just walks into your house, has an 18-year lease, doesn't speak English. So how do they even pass that citizenship test? They can't say who the first president was. They don't speak. They're just crying and kneading, and they like your wife's breasts, and that's it. Like, you can't kick them out. It's against the law. I mean, this is even where a dog is better than a baby. With a dog, let's say I go to a Broadway theater show, I could tie my dog to a pole. If I go to Lion King 3 hours, I can tie my dog to a pole outside and they'll be happy to see me when I get out. You can't tie a baby to a pole. So, I don't know. We're going to have all these new babies in 9 months. Not a fan. I've had 2 kids who were babies, and now I have 5 kids overall. We'll see when I have grandchildren how much I like babies, but certainly didn't like my kids when they were babies. They kind of were dicks when they were babies. But I survived that period and doing well. And, you know, what else is going to be, how niche, I don't know how to say it. Is it niche or niche or niche? How niche is too niche when it comes to a podcast blog? I think the more niche, the better. If you are really passionately interested in one specific thing, then knock your heart out. Like, do the podcast, do the blog on that one thing you're interested in. So no reason not to. I remember I was interested at once in studying something called the Little Blue Books. So there are these 100 million copies of these books were written and sold in the 1920s. It was like this small publishing company that produced 100 million really tiny blue books. And there's a Facebook group devoted to just this, and it has thousands of members. So no matter what your niche is, you're going to have a population that's interested in it. So, so your baby is being an ass as we speak. Yes. So, I agree. And, you know, on top of everything else that's happened this decade so far, this is the worst decade ever, by the way. We've had the Australian wildfires. Is that related to climate change? Then we had World War III. By the way, my kids were obsessed with climate change on January 2nd. January 3rd, all they asked me was, Daddy, are we going to get drafted? And I'm like, well, what happened to metal straws? Don't you care about that anymore? And just when are we getting drafted or not? And I should have told them yes, and I should have just sent them away then, learn a little bit about life. And then we had the impeachment, which, again, I don't know what happened to that. Like, that was just over. It was like the biggest event in U.S. history, and then it was just over. Then we had Megxit. Prince Harry wanted to find financial independence. And so even though his daddy is still giving him his allowance of $3 million a year. And then finally, we had this virus, the coronavirus. And this has just been a clusterfuck decade. Like, I can't stand it. But just to summarize, 3 things. Always ask, who are you? Why are you? Why now? And just do as an experiment. Scroll down your Instagram and find the photos that you shared, because that will be the clues to what your passion is, what your purpose is. Don't just do what you were doing before coronavirus, after coronavirus. Now's the time this $6 trillion landing in this economy. Now's the time you could do what you always loved. Build your idea muscle. Write 10 ideas a day. You'll start to figure out how to monetize what you love. Or you can ask me on these Instagram lives and I'll answer. Or ask me on Twitter and I'll answer on these Instagram lives. But have to go. The hour is, I have 41 seconds remaining according to the clock here. I will share this on my IG stories live. You have to click the live button. And I'll share this within a few hours on YouTube as well. See you tomorrow. I am so happy you joined. See you tomorrow. Bye.